Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. The Director of Strathmore Institute of Public Policy and Governance, Martin Bayer, Honorable Martin, Idiot Ngai, and the Director of Sereno, students of Strathmore, innovative volunteers. Good afternoon to everyone here. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today. It's an honor for me to be here, especially in this prestigious institution. It is an institution that is not just prestigious by name, but it is prestigious because of pioneering development solutions which will not only help address the multiplicity of challenges that the continent of Africa is facing today, but it's also doing so in preparing the next generation to be armed with solutions, not only solutions, but innovative solutions that can actually address these monstrous challenges. This is quite a very important time, as speaker after speaker have alluded to. This time is an important time, and if ever there was a time for us to gather, it is now. It is now because we know that in the life of any nation, as you can see on the screen, there is a time to gather stones, and there is also a time to scatter them. Recognizing that this is what happens in life. For example, right here in the African continent, our founding fathers, the decision by our founding fathers, set the continent on the path of self-determined rule, which we currently enjoy today. In the United States of America, the Declaration of Independence established the ideals that have built America into what it is today. In Europe, the Renaissance movement, a decision to focus on intellectual and cultural development, set Europe not only to be what it is today, but set the foundation that has actually made Europe modern Europe. In this present moment, at this present moment, today, the 24th of April, 2018, our convening here is not only to discuss how we can leapfrog the socioeconomic development of the African continent, but our convening here is to discuss how we can do that, taking into consideration that as we stand here today, there is a call of duty that is knocking. And that call of duty needs to be embraced with commitment and with vigor, because this is surely the transformational decision of our time. Our founding father fought for self-determined rule. This is so because the continent of Africa, as you can see, is faced with a mixed basket of challenges. Let's face it. Food and nutritional security, we have 240 million people going to bed hungry. When it comes to youth unemployment, we have 60% of youth in the entire African continent without jobs. When it comes to inefficiency in the entire agro-value chain, the continent is losing $48 billion US every year. And at the same time, the continent is importing food worth $35 billion US every year. And when you juxtapose this, with the $48 billion US that has been lost, the continent is not supposed to be importing food, importing unemployment and exporting employment. Right here in Kenya, as we speak today, Kenya post-harvest losses amount to almost $500 million US. And these could be reversed and could be injected into the economy, an extra 50 billion Kenyan shillings. Distinguished colleagues, the continent of Africa is facing challenges where we have mothers bearing their kids before they reach the age of 5. It's facing challenges like climate change that is already redefining the contours of this continent more dramatically than any other. Right here in Kenya, a projected 1 degree temperature increase will reduce crop yield by up to about 14% in the next 2 years. With climate change in the picture, the challenges, bad as they are, will be compounded by multiples. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, left unresolved, this might spell doom to the aspirations of millions across the continent. Left unresolved, this might spell doom to the sheer prosperity of Kenya Agenda 2030, of African Union Agenda 2063, and even to the Sustainable Development Goals and its derivative that many countries are implementing today. But though these challenges, ranging from nutritional and food insecurity to climate change to all these aspects, whether it is inefficiency in the entire agro-value chain, there is one challenge that if it is not addressed, all this talk about creating the Africa we want, all this talk about leaving no one behind will be elusive. And this challenge is actually what is called the ballooning youthful population in the African continent today. As we speak today, the youthful population is over 60% of the entire continental population. But at the same time, the irony is that over 60% of this very youthful population, they're unemployed. Every year, 12 million youth are getting into the labor market, graduating and getting into the labor market to compete with only 3 million jobs. That means every month, 1 million youth get into the labor market to compete with less than 25,000 jobs. But right here in Kenya, 1 in every 6 young people is unemployed. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, across Africa, these youth are already frustrated and going abroad in search of elusive greener pastures, or what they call opportunities, taking perilous routes in search of these elusive greener pastures in other continents. So the message is one and clear. Without affordable, practical, and innovative solutions to address this multiplicity of challenges in the African continent today, achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and ensuring that no one is left behind might just be an elusive dream. But what we know is that, and from an insightful African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. It is our collective efforts. As other speakers have alluded to, it is our collective efforts that we can turn these challenges into opportunity, because no problem of human making is beyond human beings. We know that when spiders unite, they can tie down a lion. We are the spiders that can be able to tie down these lions of food insecurity, the lions of climate change, the lions of unemployment, the lions of ecological degradation. Because the continent of Africa doesn't lack ideas. The continent of Africa doesn't lack innovation. Africa has everything it takes to move from talk to action. Africa has everything it takes to move from talk to action, because the Africa I'm talking about is Africa where the energy and creativity of more than 200 million youth, young men and women, are creating new and exciting businesses and industries. Their entrepreneurial spirit is visible across all the corners of the African continent today. But it is no longer tenable to keep talking about potential. Potential doesn't put food on the table. Potential doesn't prevent the mother from bearing a child before he or she reaches 5 years old. Potential doesn't prevent people from going to bed with their stomach aching of hunger. But what we need to do is that we must be able to turn this potential into reality, into tangible benefits that can benefit the current generation and even those yet to be born. Africa's past, as we all know, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, has been defined by natural resources. Its future cannot be defined by natural resources. It must be defined by us, coming together, harnessing our strengths. It must be defined by bringing together the collective strengths of our people, of our people's skills and talents, because that is the only way that we can truly write the history of Africa to be a history full of glory and dignity. But working towards this fulfillment rests on our shoulders. It rests on the shoulders of each succeeding generation, and we are that generation that we cannot be able to postpone our future. It's been postponed for quite too long, and we cannot postpone it because the parable of lack and missed plentiful opportunities has become the face of Africa. The parable of lack and missed plentiful opportunities Africa's Achilles, and this needs to be addressed. Drawing from the African wisdom that a man does not wander away far from where his corn is roasting in its simplicity. What this means is that Kenya and the entire African continent will not turn potential just by talking. The continent will have to turn potential by focusing on its strengths. It will have to leverage on its strengths, and the first is the youth, who, as I've said, over 60% of the population, together with their skills, their talents, their experiences, represents what is called Africa's sovereign world. Africa's sovereign world is not necessarily the minerals and the natural resources that it's got, it is us. We represent not just sovereign wealth, but it's sovereign capital that no amount of money can buy. The second is for the continent to maximize productivity of its catalytic sectors. Catalytic sectors in the continent are those sectors that can lift people from the bottom of the pyramid. These are economically inclusive sectors for which Africa holds a global comparative advantage. When you talk of the land, 65% of uncultivated arable land is in this continent today. When you talk of internal renewable fresh waters, 10% of them is in this continent. But we must be able to leverage also on the clean energy, the solar, the sun that this continent receives 365 days is not received in Europe or in the United States or other continents in the world. Kenya, and indeed the continent, cannot afford to wander far away from its corn. These catalytic sectors represent Africa's roasting corn, and the continent cannot afford to wander far from it. This is how Africa's lack admits plentiful opportunities. Africa's unfulfilled potential will be resolved, and this is how Africa can self-discover herself. But there is a formula to that self-discovery. The formula is a formula that is premised on selflessness, not on selfishness. It's a formula that is premised on collectivism, not individualism. It's a formula that is premised on hopefulness, not hopelessness. It is a formula that is premised on leveraging on each and everyone's skills, leveraging on each and everyone's talent, skills, networks, initiatives of each and everyone, and channeling these towards one common goal, which is to maximize the productivity of Africa's catalytic sectors, of what is called clean energy, but clean energy not just to provide electricity for domestic consumption, but to add value to what is produced, but how it is produced, not working against the environment, working with nature and not against nature, through what we call the ecosystem-based adaptation-driven agriculture. This is the essence of innovative volunteerism. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as earlier colleagues alluded to, during the discussions, there is an African proverb that goes, when a cock crows, it signals a new day. This discussion is signaling a new day. It's signaling a new day, a new narrative, and catalyzing a different mindset change that the continent desperately needs at this hour of need, to truly create an opportunity where each and every one of us can prosper, not because it is a right, because we must. To catalyze and move towards creating income and wealth and opportunities, and building climate resilience at the same time. If we are to turn the challenges of food insecurity, if we are to turn the challenges of poverty, if we are to turn the challenges of unemployment, of ecological degradation, of climate change into opportunities for the youth, so that they can actually lead as solution providers in Africa's journey to self-discovery, we will not just be doing what our founding fathers loved us to do, we'll be driving transformational change for people and planet. Because for us to do this, we must be able to understand that Africa's self-discovery must become a reality. But for this to happen, we must focus our collective strengths and resources in what drives the development of nations. Every country and continent develops by focusing in an area that can be able to drive that engine. And this development of nations and regions, development starts from an engine. And in Africa, agriculture is this engine. But it's not agriculture alone. Agriculture alone will not be able to be this engine, but it's agriculture whereby we converge complementary sectors as auxiliary to drive productivity around this engine sector that constitutes Africa's catalytic area. But it is not any kind of agriculture. It is not any kind of agriculture, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's agriculture that works with nature, not against nature. What we call the ecosystem-based adaptation-driven agriculture, but linked to clean energy for value addition. Can you imagine that in 2018, the continent of Africa is exporting employment, adding only 10% to what it produced? That's unacceptable in 2018. Because we know that studies after studies have shown that utilizing nature-based approaches will not only be addressing environmental issues, they will also be addressing social issues. And studies have shown that they can increase yields up to about 128%. And when value is added, we'll be reversing the 48 billion US dollars that is getting down the drain annually as a result of inefficiency in the entire agro value chain. And these are resources that the continent needs. And this will create the jobs that the youth need. At the same time, using this approach will not only help to reverse the 68 billion US dollars that the continent is losing each and every day, each and every year, which literally means that the continent is losing 187 million US dollars as a result of ecological degradation. But all these are jobs that have been lost. But amalgamation of nature-based driven agriculture with clean energy can help the continent tap into the 1 trillion agro-economy in less than 12 years from today. Why am I saying this? Lessons from far and wide show the effectiveness of this integrated approach. Lessons from far and wide show the effectiveness of this integrated approach of converging strengths around an engine sector. They have shown how a mineral-barren country, roughly 5 times more than many African countries, and as we speak today, its economy, the economy of South Korea has become 15 times combined the economies of most African countries. In 1962, just a year before many countries broke loose from the colonial rule, South Korea, faced with dry coffers, was laying the cornerstone of what would become the economic powerhouse as we know today. Back then, Korea's agriculture, accounting for 75% of its output, was at its most critical juncture. However, Korea in 1962 had a bad situation that in the face of acute starvation, Kenya actually gave Korea a $10,000 US dollar loan and also supported South Korea provided relief food to South Korea. But what is the lesson here? The most exciting lesson from this is that we can learn from South Korea's rise to where it is today, with an economy 15 times more than African economies. It is based on maximizing on their strength, maximizing on strategic industries, on strategic areas, on this catalytic sector, towards ensuring that other auxiliary sectors complement the agricultural sector, which is the engine driver that actually brought them to where they are today. But this integration is not new. Right here in Kenya, examples of small scales show the effectiveness of connecting the dots. In Busia, for example, farm production being linked to value addition in the form of solar dryers is cutting post-harvest losses. In Yamera County, women farmers, by connecting the dots, have doubled their vegetable incomes by adopting solar dryers to preserve their harvest. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the message is clear. Connecting the dot is a must and is a necessity in 2018 and in the 21st century. Silos have actually presented the biggest risk in the continent. Duplication of effort is actually posing the biggest operational risk that will not be able to ensure that Africa actually become the Africa that we want. But what we know is that there's this African proverb which goes that cross a river in a crowd and the crocodile won't eat you. What this proverb is telling us today is that it's appealing to the virtue that is shared universally across the entire continent today. It's the virtue of solidarity. It's the virtue of unity of purpose, which we must be able to embrace, and this is the gist of what is called innovative volunteerism. Innovative volunteerism is a thinking with which to drive transformational change in the African continent today. But for this to happen, we must be able to ensure that there is an inclusive framework that brings each and everyone together, that brings civil societies, NGOs, academia, research, international development organizations, the private sector, and even individual citizens who may not have a place for their voices to be heard, for their ideas to be incubated. And this is what gave birth to the ecosystem-based adaptation for food security assembly. On the 31st of July 2015, collectively through a continental process established by the United Nations Environment Programme and the African Union, both of which Kenya is a member, EBAFOSA is a country-driven initiative. It is an inclusive policy implementation framework that conveys multiple sectors of the economy to work in complementarity for synergy to accelerate socioeconomic transformation and build climate resilience through ensuring that nature-based driven agriculture with its auxiliary sectors can actually be able to become the strategic thrust of the entire African continent today. EBAFOSA, it's a citizens' assembly. EBAFOSA is a coalition of the willing. EBAFOSA brings together talents. What matters with EBAFOSA is the talent, is the skills. Everyone's skills and talent matters in connecting the dots. And this coalition of the willing, bringing people together motivated to tap into the opportunities that are inherent in the challenges that are enumerated, whether they're challenges of food insecurity, whether they're challenges of unemployment, challenges of ecological degradation, is what EBAFOSA is all about. The premise of EBAFOSA is selflessness, an anchor on collectivism. Individualism for quite so long has not helped address the challenges that could have been addressed 50 years back. We must be able to move forward in using our collective strength, because collectivism is strength. Collectivism where each and every one of us has a part to play, individually as well as through the institutions we represent, towards the realization of this desirable goal, which is to ensure that Africa actually become the Africa we want, and ensure that no one is left behind. as enshrined in Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. These are the elements of innovative volunteerism. With innovative volunteerism, what counts most is not who knows you. With innovative volunteerism, what counts most is not who knows you, but it is your passion and commitment. Money cannot buy passion. Money cannot buy commitment. Money cannot buy dedication. Money cannot buy determination, but these are values, the intrinsic values that are supposed to be the foundation, the driver that propels us forward. Innovative volunteerism, what counts is passion and commitment to drive transformational change through sustainable agriculture-led clean energy power industrialization. But for this to happen within Ebafosa is driving this through what we call the Ebafosa Big Five pillars. These pillars are connecting the dots and unleashing the opportunities that are needed to create inclusive world. Pillar one is on amalgamation. Amalgamation of clean energy, where clean energy is used to add value, and at the same time also power production, whether it is solar power irrigation that is not adding emissions into the atmosphere, and at the same time adding value to what is produced, because as I said earlier, a man does not wander far from where his corn is roasting. At the foundation of Africa's drive for accelerated socioeconomic development and transformation, as well as building climate resilience, is what we call these catalytic sectors that I explained earlier. But what needs to be done is that these sectors cannot function in silos. They must be integrated so that what is produced, value is added to what is produced. And this is already happening across the continent through the framework of Ebafosa. The second is policy harmonization. Policy is the biggest driver of change. Regardless of what happens on the ground, if policy is not there to create an enabling environment, it will become very difficult, because the African proverb that a single bracelet does not jingle is telling us that if we do things in silo without uniquely positioning this to be driven by policy, but not policy silos, but policies that speak to one another, what we call policy harmonization or policy coherence and synchronization, we might not be able to drive transformational change in the African continent. Agriculture will need to work with energy. Energy policies need to reconcile with agricultural policy. Agriculture needs to work with transport and infrastructure to ensure that what is produced can be efficiently linked to markets to maximize incomes. Agriculture will need to work with trade to ensure that what is produced can actually secure markets, which can become an incentive. Agriculture, when we connect all these dots, will not just be reversing the 48 billion US dollars that has been lost as a result of inefficiency, but we will also be ensuring that the continent's foreign reserves are not depleted in the form of importing food costing 35 billion US dollars every year. And this will result in creating millions of jobs across the continent. What research, practical evidence have shown is that the continent could be creating 17 million jobs every year. And the 12 million youth who are getting into the labor market every year and competing for 3 million jobs will not even be competing, because you have surplus jobs created in the continent by using this engine sector of agriculture. Right here in Kenya, through the framework of Ebafosa, connecting the policy dots is already happening. Right here in Kenya, for instance, making implementation of various policies for coherence and synergy towards actualizing the Big Four has started. And this is happening through the Ebafosa Kenya Interagency Policy Task Force, which is hosted under the Ministry of Agriculture. And what they're looking at is implementation of the country's climate-smart agriculture strategy under the Ministry of Agriculture, which is being connected to the Green Economy Strategy under the Ministry of Environment, and also linked to the National Industrialization Policy under the Ministry of Industries, and the provisions of the Finance Act, especially exemptions on inputs of manufacture of pesticides under the National Treasury for joint actions in local manufacture and use of organic fertilizers. And this is going to contribute to Kenya government Big Four: food security, health, manufacturing. The third is market incentives. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, if the cockroach wants to rule over the chicken, then it must hire the fox as a bodyguard. If the cockroach wants to rule over the chicken, then it must hire the fox as a bodyguard. Though this may sound comical, what this means is that in the context of our discussion today, the African proverb is telling us one thing. It is telling us that in today's market-driven economies, what we produce, we must be able to ensure that we also master the market. We must be able to master the market if we are truly to lift people from the bottom of the pyramid, to ensure that no one goes to bed hungry, to ensure that the 60% or above of our youth can actually create wealth for themselves and even for those yet to be born. Because this is a development that must be able to be at the forefront of the transformational agenda of the continent and will require leveraging on robust market enabler. On the 21st of March 2018, in the capital city of Rwanda, Kigali, the African head of state and government signed the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, representing the most robust market enabler we have in the entire African continent today. And this is consolidating the 1.2 billion people strong market with a combined gross domestic product of over 3.4 trillion US dollars. But the question then is, how can this become a market pull factor to incentivize transformational change for the entire African continent? Already through the framework of EBAFOSA, what is happening is that EBAFOSA is engaging with 40 African countries, with Kenya included, to solidify these paradigm shifts and provide an opportunity whereby what is produced using nature-based approaches and value added using clean energy and connected to markets using resilient transport system is what is going to be called the EBAFOSA compliance standards. The efficacy of these standards is that it builds on already existing approved standards in the entire continent today, working with the bureaus of standards of these countries rather than reinventing the wheel. Accordingly, countries are merging existing approved standards in clean energy, in nature-based agriculture, in organic agriculture, in information communication technology, and quality to come up with this encompassing standard. And these standards will ensure that agro producers along the entire agro value chain can fetch markets across all the 55 African countries and the entire globe. This is an opportunity for the continent. The application of these standards is set to create market enablers and appeal to health and to the climate conscious consumers who are increasingly getting bigger in the continent and also globally. It will ensure that a cassava produced from Kenya can be bought from a market in Togo, a market in Cote d'Ivoire, in Cameroon, in Nigeria, with the peace of mind that that cassava is pure, with the peace of mind that that cassava is natural, with the peace of mind that the cassava is non-chemicalized, that will not compromise consumers' health, that it didn't add to the emissions in the atmosphere, and that the ecosystems were not destroyed while producing this cassava. And this provides an opportunity for the African continent that will not only leverage to drive transformational change, but create the needed jobs that will be able to ensure that no one is left behind. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the fourth pillar is innovative financing. The continent of Africa today, with the latest statistics as shown in the UN Environment Africa Adaptation Gap report, we are at 1.1 degree as we speak today. The world is warming faster than imagined. It's redefining the contours of this continent every day, every week, every month, every year. The drought in the Sahel, to the drought in the Horn of Africa, the floods in Sierra Leone, to the floods in DRC, are testament to the fact that a long-distance issue has moved into the present. But the cause of climate change is astronomical. The continent will need 50 billion if the world reaches 2 degrees. We're just 0.9 degrees away from 2 degrees. But currently, with the changing climate that is already with us today, the continent needs each and everywhere 7 to 15 billion US dollars. But the question is, where will that money come from? And the answer is, it will come from this continent. But it will not come from this continent by using the classical approaches of waiting for others to fund Africa's development. It will come by ensuring that we innovate and utilize what we have to be able to generate those resources in an innovative way, whereby finance is not about finance. It is finance for investment to drive transformational change in Africa's catalytic sector and reverse the 48 billion US dollars that is lost yearly, and reverse the over 60 billion US dollars that is lost through illicit financial flow, and reversed the 35 billion US dollars that is being lost as a result of importation of food that should be produced here. Because the funniest thing is, Africa produces what it doesn't consume, and consumes what it doesn't produce. Unacceptable. And this must end. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the pillar on innovative financing, the principle is to leverage on cooperatives. The principle of cooperatives and risk-sharing facilities are being developed through the framework of Bavosa over 40 African countries today, where on-farm enterprises using nature-based approaches are pooling their resources to acquire clean energy that are then used communally in powering value addition. In other cases, those pooled resources are used as security because nature-based approaches have been proven to be a risk averter. And this risk averter is actually helping to ensure that those who are using these nature-based approaches and using clean energy to add value can be able to get loans at low interest rates. For example, right here in Kenya, through the framework of a Bafosa, a farmers cooperative called eFarm has actually come together to be working with a clean energy firm called Epic Center Africa to double flexible and affordable clean energy financing products for cooperative members so they can acquire equipment like solar dryers, solar-powered irrigation, and cut post-harvest losses. The fifth pillar is on ICT, enhancing markets and supply chain efficiencies and ensuring that mutual multi-stakeholder partnerships can be brought together among complementary actors. As we know, Africa is actually the fastest growing information communication technology market. As we speak today, 600 million to 1 billion in venture capital investment is projected for Africa's ICT in 2018 as we speak today. But leveraging on mobile and computer applications to facilitate low carbon footprint, interactions among the entire supply chain, along the nature-based adaptation, EVA-driven agriculture-led clean energy agro-industrialization is the way to go. And through the framework of Ebafosa, this is being taken and it's been accomplished through what is called mobile Ebafosa or Mbafosa. In each of the countries, a virtual Ebafosa integrating processes, products and services along the entire EBA. And this is where the jobs will be created for the youth, because this is going to assemble vendors, it's going to be able to train the youth on how they can be able to apply the Ebafosa compliance standards, on how to be able to ensure that they can be able to connect farmers to market. They can be able to connect those who are dealing with clean energy to reach even those farmers. And they can be able even to connect with financial institutions that are within the Ebafosa framework. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, across the entire continent as we speak today, innovative volunteerism is not just a word. Innovative volunteerism is not blind optimism. It's already happening across the African continent as individual citizens like you and me, youth like you yourselves, corporate citizens are leveraging what they have. They're leveraging on their skills, on their talents. They're leveraging on all these elements to be able to drive this transformational change across the continent, from the coastlines of Cote d'Ivoire to Nigeria, to the Gambia, to Togo, to Ghana, to Sierra Leone, all in West Africa, to the savannas of Cameroon, Democratic Republic of Congo, in Central Africa, to the highlands of Kenya, and to the Matoke Hills of Uganda, and to the savannas of Southern Africa, Malawi, Zambia. The spirit of innovative volunteerism is vibrating across the continent. And youth are doing it not just because they must do it, they're doing it because it is the right thing for this continent to do, because the youth are not the future leaders. The youth are the present leaders. It is a narrative where youth like yourselves are taking leadership in operationalizing these Ebafosa Big Five pillars and writing their own stories. It's a story like that of Cyrus Mbugua Kimani, a young electrical engineer working as a facilities management professional right here in Kenya. He is actioning the Ebafosa clean energy agro-industrialization. 2 months ago, Cyrus registered as an innovative volunteer, just as some of you have already done, seated here today. And when he registered as an innovative volunteerism volunteer, he did not stop just by registering. Researching on potential enterprise opportunities in clean energy power agro-industrialization, it did not take him long to do so and to come up with an idea called irrigation as a service. Irrigation as a service business, where working with clean energy actors and farmers cooperatives in Kenya, what he has done, he is now sourcing irrigation equipment and leasing this to farmers' cooperatives. And in the process, he gets his cut for bridging this supply chain gap. This is innovative volunteerism in action. Stories like that of Liz Makeni Miruti, a final year student of environmental science in Kenyatta University. She too registered as an innovative volunteer a couple of months back, and she took interest in a proposed pillar of policy harmonization and took her time to research the different policies in Kenya, because the continent of Africa doesn't lack policy. The continent of Africa doesn't lack declarations. People even joke, sometimes jokingly say that Africa is a cemetery for policies. And the biggest problem in the continent is to understand how policy can actually be turned into action. Her research did not only result on plausible policy combinations based on existing policy that Kenya Ebabosa, Interagency Policy Task Force, is actually utilizing not just to synchronize policies, but to help ensure that the Big Four agenda can be driven. This is innovative volunteerism in action. It's stories from across the borders, like in Nigeria, where a young man called Olagunji, a recent graduate, has mobilized his former classmates, and they've come up with a concept. With technical backstopping from our end, with their skills and talents and their passion, they are not only helping to source clean energy across Nigeria, but they've actually started ensuring that they can be able to leverage on the risk, on the proposal as a risk averter, the proposal actions, and they're on track to building partnerships with experienced professionals towards launching their own professional services enterprise. This is innovative volunteerism in action. It's stories like that of Raymond, a young man in Makerere University, whom I met February this year. He came up to me and told me that he has a skill, a computer science student, and I told him that he can be able to assemble his classmates, and through technical backstopping, he has actually developed Mbafosa Uganda. That is innovative volunteerism in action. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this innovative volunteerism in action is not blind optimism. Determined youth and passionate youth and committed youth are taking it into their hands to show that we don't lack innovations, we don't lack ideas, but sometimes we need to be guided. And by doing this, they are earning and creating wealth for themselves. They are contributing to society. So we should never ever sit back. And I can tell you for free, the sky is the limit for those ready to leverage on their skills and apply for themselves to hard work, connecting the dots along the entire Ebafosa continuum. These are just some of the examples. There are many of them in the African continent today. These are just few examples to show that the formula of engendering an inclusive Africa is on the move. These pockets of success stories are a clarion call and encouragement for us to build on. This is a clarion call for us to ensure that we can be able to leverage on our voluntary skills. We can be able to do so in a way that we're contributing to driving the transformational agenda of the continent, and that is how the world will be created for each and every one of us. So many are already doing this across the continent. And as the African proverb tells us, if you think that you are too small to make a difference, then it means you have never spent the night with a mosquito. So we should not despise ourselves. So we should ensure that our collective actions can move mountains, because if you want to move a mountain, we must start by lifting stones today. Some of us want to move mountains immediately. It doesn't work that way. We must roll up our sleeves. We must struggle a little bit. We must be determined and passionate, because as I said, money cannot buy passion. Money cannot buy commitment. We must be passionate about what we do, and Ebafosa provides you with that opportunity to make the difference now into the future. A feature like that of Mohamed Tal that I met in Gambia in October 2017. Mohamed Tal has spent 14 years in Europe doing menial jobs. He went there in search of greener pastures, forgetting that sometimes it's greener back here in Africa than even anywhere in the world. But to survive by doing these menial jobs, doing this for 14 years, he returned home 5 years ago. He tried to use his skills to build up his assets by starting composition production. But he came up to me with tears rolling down his cheek. And he told me he's been trying to do this for the past 5 years. And despite his skills and knowledge around composite production of biofertilizer, he's never found an inclusive space where he can be able to use these skills to create wealth for himself and for his entire country. But he told me with the Bafosa he found his voice. With the Bafosa he put his skills into use, and he got the complementary actors and partners that he can now be able to supply his biofertilizer not just to farmers, but actually he is now running an industry of biofertilizer production. And he is training youth, the entrepreneurs of this generation, and creating wealth for himself and also for those youth. This is a Bafosa. It's a story like that of young, talented students in St. Kizito High School in Uganda who are developing practical skills in briquette production, in utilizing climate-smart agricultural actions, ecosystem-driven agricultural approaches, and also turning waste into biogas, but also supplementing their technical skills with a business entrepreneurial training. This initiative is not only transforming St. Kizito, but it's preparing these young kids to be able not only to come out of school to look for jobs, but to create jobs for themselves. That is a spirit and the nurturing spirit that is happening within the framework of a Bafosa. And talking of the future, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, one of my favorite African proverbs is that where you will sit when you are old shows where you stood during your youthful days. Where you will sit when you are old shows where you stood in youth. I believe you will agree with me that this discussion here today, the 24th of April 2018, is a discussion that is not just building on your ideas, because you will agree with me that your ideas can spark creativity. Your ideas can drive entrepreneurial opportunities. You will agree with me that you are the centerpiece of this civilization that we want to drive across the entire African continent. You will agree with me that with your skills that you are the biggest stakeholder of Africa's future. And you will agree with me that we need to move from dreams and do bigger things, because dreaming and dreaming big for Africa is what all of us should do. But we cannot dare stop at our dreams. We need to arise from slumber, roll up our sleeves, and at the same time create the dreams and make them happen. Because we are endowed, as you are sitting here, you are endowed by our Creator with inherent capacity, not only to dream, but to act. You are endowed with inherent capacity to dream and create your dreams, and by doing so, take leadership in transforming the African continent. The message is clear and it is simple. It is time to passionately engage in innovative volunteerism, because that is the signal. Many of us must have been waiting for a signal. Innovative volunteerism is a signal. Some of us might have been waiting for a sign. Innovative volunteerism is the sign. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm calling you to do today is that you should embrace and act on by ensuring that you package your competencies, your dreams, whatever thing they may be. Whether you are a history student, whether you are a political science student, or whether you are working in engineering or studying engineering, or in performing arts, or in entrepreneurship, in any field, package these towards this shared transformational agenda of complementing the actualization of sustainable agro-industrialization in Africa. It is a $1 trillion agroeconomy industry that each and every one of us can tap into. And the question that we always ask in the African continent is, what will I gain by doing this? Because we love asking questions, which is a good thing, but sometimes we need to ask questions and also act. What will I gain by doing this? What I'm telling you today is that through innovatively volunteering your skill, volunteering your knowledge, and resources at your disposal towards this bigger goal of industrializing the African continent, what you are going to do, you will not just have an opportunity to network with people. You will not just have an opportunity to meet and interact with different people, whether they are industry leaders. You will also have that opportunity to showcase your skills. You will also have that opportunity to get mentored, to refine them, and to earn practical hands-on experience, like those that are already doing amazing work, getting mentored and understanding how they can be part of that transformational change in the African continent today. You will also earn practical hands-on experience that position you to be competitive in the labor markets across the world, regardless of where you come from. Your address is not necessarily where you come from. Your address now is on global stage. You must be able to seize that opportunity by preparing yourself and ensuring that you get yourself skilled, and not just skilled, but with the talents and the requisite knowledge that is required to tap into the opportunities, not only in Kenya, but across Africa. Not only in Africa, but across the entire world. Because we are the ones we've been waiting for. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I am an optimist in chief. And the reason why I'm optimist in chief and I will always remain one is that the world may seem to be in a terrible mess today. But what I have learned from my life experiences and also in my professional career is that there is hope. With hope, we can achieve anything. Because hopelessness destroys the will to live. And what I've learned, and I believe all of us here have done the same, it is only by holding on to hope and promoting hope in others that we can actually change Africa and change the world. We have everything it takes to do so. I was not born into wealth. I grew up herding goats. Like a young man you can see in this picture here. I grew up herding goats in a small town in the northwestern part of Cameroon. And the only hope and inspiration that I got from my parents was hard work and perseverance. Because they told me that with hard work and perseverance, everyone's dreams are valid. I went to school without shoes. But the inspiration was simple. Work hard, but hard work is not enough. Combine it with passion, but passion alone is not enough. Persevere, but perseverance alone is not enough. But patience with humility sometimes, and be obedient, and respect one another. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, when I finished university, I stayed for 1 year volunteering to gain skills, and through perseverance, I won a scholarship to study at the University of Nottingham. It was those volunteering skills that helped me to win that scholarship. And those volunteering skills are actually what gave me the opportunity, and I'm still using some of those skills today. And I later on went to Harvard University Kennedy School of Government to pursue an executive education to understand how energy policy works and how the 21st century in the African continent, how the geopolitics of energy can actually drive Africa's transformation if this is harnessed. But there is a proverb in where I come from, in the northwestern part of Cameroon, that better little than too little. Better little than too little. I made an effort to get the little. Each and every one of us here have made an effort to get a little, and let us continue to make an effort to get a little. Incrementally, we will transform the African continent. These experiences have taught me a lot that I share with you here today. The first is never be afraid to dream. Never be afraid to dream, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, because by dreaming big, if your dream doesn't scare you, as they say, then that's not a dream. The second is, dreaming is not enough. Yes, it's good to dream. Dreaming is not enough. To achieve anything, you must apply discipline. You must apply discipline and consistency. That is tested and proven. You must apply discipline and consistency. And you must ensure that you have goals. You must plan for every day. Have a goal and then you have a plan. Each and every day you must plan. You must plan every day. You must work hard. Hard work is very crucial. Working really hard is key. The third is that you should never ever forget that how much you have is what you do with what you have. Let me repeat that. How much you have is what you do with what you have. Some of us are waiting for manna to fall from heaven. We already have the manna. It's just what we do with what we have. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the final one is that never ever aspire to make a living. Always aspire to make a difference in people's lives. All of you here today have the blessing of an education, and as you know, knowledge is power. Yes, it truly is. Use your pens to write about Africa. Use your knowledge and your pens to promote hope in other people. Always know that you can touch each and every one and that you are someone else's inspiration. And use your knowledge to promote hope and change Africa and write about Africa. Tweet about Africa in a positive way. And always contribute in a positive way to transformational discussions. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, God is no respecter of persons. And while He favorably gave Africa the resource, Africans must work hard. They must work against many odds. I've heard someone joke that God must have been in a very good mood when He created the African continent. As someone who has spent some time in other continents, I agree. I attest to this. Just, let's face it, from the strategic position, symmetrically about the equator, Africa boasts of not only the best weather of all the years, but it boasts of the best weather all year round. but is favorably positioned to tap into solar energy 365 days a year. The continent of Africa, when you talk of the basic factors of production, this continent, actually as we speak today, 65% of uncultivated arable land is in this continent. When you talk of internal renewable fresh waters, 10% is in this continent. When you talk of the rivers, of the seas, of the lakes, when you talk of the captivating sceneries, when you talk of the diverse, exciting wildlife, it is all here in the African continent. This is in addition to the tremendous, seemingly infinite mineral wealth in the continent. And it is a responsibility to erase the shame. It is a responsibility, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, to erase the shame. That is the paradox of desperate lack amidst plentiful opportunity that has now become synonymous to the name Africa. Distinguished colleagues, innovative volunteerism is the formula. Let's apply it together. As scriptures underscore, iron sharpens iron. Innovative volunteerism bestows on each and every one of us an opportunity and duty to use what we have in our areas of expertise, in our areas of enterprise as premium for targeted alliance building, where the aim is enhancing and buttressing capacity of our fellow brothers and sisters and neighbors so we can jointly drive and engage in this catalytic area to collectively build wealth for our countries and for our own continent. And the priority and the tangible areas of engagement being the Ebaposa Big Five pillars. As we do this, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let us be reminded of what Kwame Nkrumah said on the 12th of June 1965. He told the people of Ghana that as we do this, we know that the task ahead is great indeed. The task ahead is great indeed, and heavy is the responsibility. And yet it is noble and glorious. It is a noble and a glorious challenge. But it is a challenge which calls for the courage to dream. It is a challenge which calls for the courage to dare. It is a challenge which calls for the courage to envision, the courage to act. And that action cannot be anything less, but it should be able to be taken with the vigor and the commitment that we must do. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we know that by crawling a child learns to stand. As you can see in that image, by crawling a child learns to stand, that having witnessed the effectiveness of innovative volunteerism, using what we have, our talents, our skills across the continent, the glaring opportunities are there, and we must resolve to be able to act with determination. We must resolve to be able to refine our skills, to be able to tap into the opportunities that Africa presents. Innovative volunteerism is how we can reshape. It is the pathway, it is a signal, it is a sign that can help us reshape the development of Africa. Yes, it is possible. As Chinua Achebe once says, when we gather together as kingsmen and women, we do not do so because we cannot see the moonlight from where we are. When we gather as kingsmen and women, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, under the moonlight village, we do not do so because we cannot see the moon. Everybody can see it in his own compound. Rather, we come together because it is a good thing for kingsmen and women to do. This gathering here today and this discussion, we gather here as sons and daughters of the African continent. We gather here to tap into opportunities to discuss it differently, into the team spirit, because we know that togetherness is our strength. Togetherness, we can be able to harness what is needed to actualize the imperatives of food security, to actualize the shared imperative of employment, to actualize the shared imperative of creating wealth and building climate resilience for the African continent today. This is the underlying premise that should energize each and every one of us to drive transformational change for the entire African continent. This is the underlying premise that should be able to ensure that we can be able to drive this transformation with passion, with energy. And this is what innovative volunteerism is all about. This is how we can reshape the development of the African continent and do so without leaving anyone behind. Let us therefore galvanize actions using what we have and ensure that we can win it for ourselves and win it also for the future generation, because at this moment of need, we must usher ourselves to action. If there is a mother somewhere bearing his or her kid before he or she reaches the age of 5, that should matter to us. And if it matters to us, we must usher ourselves to action. If there is an unemployed who is roaming around the streets, or somewhere that we know with a skill that can add value to what is produced in the continent today, that should matter to us. Because our youth are not supposed to be buried under the Mediterranean Sea or sold for $500 across the Sahara Desert when they're crossing Sahara Desert to Europe. If there is a mother who goes to bed with a stomach aching of hunger, the 240 million citizens across the continent, they're going to bed with a stomach aching of hunger, should be able to usher us to action. And if that truly matters to us, let innovative volunteerism become our watchword, because we must ensure that we put poverty on the run and prosperity into the cockpit. The future is innovative volunteerism. Thank you.